Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that constantly sells us the idea of perfection, flawless skin, perfect bodies, perfect jobs, perfect lives. But today, I invite you to challenge that illusion and instead embrace a far more powerful truth. Our imperfections are not weaknesses, they are windows to our humanity, and often our greatest strength. Let me share with you four key points that highlight why embracing imperfection leads to a more meaningful, beautiful life. Number one, imperfections make us unique. It's a simple statement, yet within it lies a profound truth that challenges how we see ourselves and others. In a world where social media filters, flawless advertising, and curated lives dominate our screens, the pressure to appear perfect can be overwhelming. We're constantly surrounded by images and messages that equate value with flawlessness, clear skin, perfect bodies, immaculate homes, and seamless achievements. But this narrative, while loud and persistent, is not the truth of human experience. The truth is, our imperfections are what make us interesting, relatable, and deeply human. Imagine a world where everyone looked, spoke, and thought the same way. A world without diversity of personality, background, or story. Would that be a beautiful world, or would it be a dull and lifeless copy of itself? Our differences, the things that make us stand out, are often rooted in our so-called flaws. It might be a stutter that taught someone patience and empathy, a birthmark that became a symbol of identity, or a painful failure that sparked a powerful comeback. What we perceive as imperfections often become the very traits that shape our character and define our paths. Take the example of great artists, thinkers, and leaders throughout history. Many of them struggled with insecurities, personal flaws, or unconventional traits. Beethoven composed some of his greatest music while battling deafness. Frida Kahlo painted raw, emotional self-portraits while enduring immense physical and emotional pain. Albert Einstein was considered slow in school and had difficulty with traditional learning methods, yet he went on to change the world of science forever. These individuals didn't rise in spite of their imperfections, they rose because of them. Their uniqueness wasn't found in polished perfection, but in the courage to embrace their limitations and transform them into strength. Even in our everyday lives, the people we are drawn to most deeply are rarely the ones who appear perfect on the surface. We're moved by people who are real, those who admit when they're struggling, who laugh at their own mistakes, who show up fully as themselves. There's a kind of magic in authenticity. When someone allows their imperfections to be seen, it gives others permission to do the same. It creates an atmosphere of trust and openness, where connection becomes more meaningful than image. Children are a beautiful reminder of this truth. When a child draws a picture with wild colors and crooked lines, we don't criticize the lack of symmetry or technique, we celebrate the spirit, the freedom, the originality. That childlike freedom to be imperfect and proud of it is something we slowly lose as we grow older and become more aware of judgment. But deep down, that creative, imperfect spirit still lives within us, and it waits for us to stop apologizing for our flaws and start embracing them. There is also a kind of strength in owning our imperfections. It means we are no longer running from ourselves or trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for us. When we accept what makes us different, we begin to stand in our truth. That truth may include past mistakes, physical scars, or personal struggles, but it also includes growth, resilience, and the ability to rise after falling. Imperfections tell the story of where we've been and how far we've come. Think about the people you love the most. Chances are, the things you love about them aren't their perfect appearances or flawless achievements, but the little things that make them unique, the way they snort when they laugh, how they get awkward when nervous, their passion for something obscure, or how they always know how to make you feel better even when they're struggling too. Those are the things that stick with us, not perfection, but personality, not symmetry, but soul. We often underestimate the power of our so-called flaws. A soft-spoken voice might teach someone to listen more attentively. A shy nature might give way to deep observation and insight. A difficult past might lead to compassion for others who are hurting. Every imperfection holds potential, if we are willing to see it not as a liability, but as a gift. And once we shift our perspective, we begin to understand that we are not broken, we are simply becoming. Of course, embracing imperfection doesn't mean we stop trying to improve or grow. It doesn't mean settling for harmful behavior or unhealthy patterns. But it does mean we stop chasing the illusion that we must be flawless in order to be worthy. Growth comes from self-awareness, not self-hate. True transformation begins when we love ourselves enough to heal, not because we think we're not good enough, but because we already are. There's something deeply empowering about saying, "This is who I am, not perfect, but real." In that space of self-acceptance, a new kind of confidence is born. One that isn't loud or boastful, but quiet and grounded. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because it already knows that value isn't something you earn by being perfect, it's something you already have simply by being human. So as you move through your life, remember this. Your imperfections are not your weakness. They are your fingerprint, your brushstroke, your voice in a noisy world. They are the cracks where your light shines through. Don't waste your energy trying to erase them. Instead, honor them. Let them guide you. Let them speak to others who are still learning to love their own. In the end, it's not our perfection that connects us, it's our imperfections. And within those flaws lies the deepest kind of beauty, the beauty of truth, of courage, of being fully and unapologetically yourself. Number 2, growth begins where perfection ends. That simple sentence carries the weight of a truth we often try to ignore. We are taught from a young age to aim for perfection, perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect appearances. Society rewards polish, excellence, and high achievement. And while striving for excellence is admirable, chasing perfection can quietly destroy our ability to grow. Why? Because perfection doesn't leave room for failure. And failure is often the very soil where growth takes root. Perfection is a fixed mindset. It says you must get it right the first time. Mistakes mean you're not good enough, and if you're not the best, don't bother. But life doesn't work that way. No one wakes up one day already wise, strong, and successful. Growth, real, meaningful growth, happens in the messy, uncertain places. It begins when we stop trying to appear flawless and start allowing ourselves to be learners. Learners stumble. Learners try, fail, and try again. And in those moments of struggle, we evolve into stronger, deeper versions of ourselves. When we're obsessed with being perfect, we become paralyzed by the fear of failure. We avoid taking risks. We stop asking questions. We stay inside our comfort zones, afraid of being exposed as not enough. But comfort never creates change. You cannot improve something you're unwilling to see as imperfect. It's only when we confront our shortcomings honestly and without shame that we create space to improve. Imagine a child learning to walk. They fall countless times. They bump into furniture, lose balance, cry, and get back up. No one expects a child to be perfect on the first try. In fact, every fall is part of the process. And yet, somewhere along the way as we grow older, we start believing that mistakes are signs of weakness. We think we should already have it figured out. We forget that we're still learning, still becoming, still human. Think about how growth really works. A muscle gets stronger only when it's stretched, stressed, and even torn slightly. That discomfort signals to the body that adaptation is needed. The same principle applies to our emotional, mental, and spiritual development. If everything is smooth, if we never feel challenged or uncomfortable, we don't have a reason to stretch ourselves. We stay the same. But when life tests us, when things fall apart, when we fail, when we feel lost, that's where growth becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. We have to choose to lean into the discomfort and use it. One of the most liberating realizations we can have is that we don't need to be perfect to be worthy of growth. In fact, the people who grow the most are those who are willing to admit they have room to grow. It takes humility to say, "I don't know everything." It takes courage to say, "I was wrong." It takes strength to say, "I need help." But those admissions don't make us weak, they make us wise. They open the door to learning, healing, and progress. Some of the most successful people in the world have failed spectacularly. They've made mistakes in public, faced criticism, and suffered loss. But instead of giving up, they chose to learn. They saw failure not as an end, but as feedback. Every setback became a stepping stone. They didn't cling to perfection, they embraced the process. And in doing so, they discovered that growth isn't about never falling, it's about always rising. We often confuse perfection with excellence, but they're not the same. Excellence says, do your best, keep improving, stay open. Perfection says, if it's not flawless, it's worthless. Excellence leads to mastery. Perfection leads to burnout, anxiety, and self-doubt. And ironically, the constant chase for perfection often holds us back from reaching excellence because we're too afraid to fail forward. Growth also requires grace. We must be kind to ourselves in the process of becoming. When we slip up, when we fall short, when we take 2 steps back, we have to resist the urge to beat ourselves up. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It's the steady voice that says, yes, you messed up, but you are still worthy of trying again. That inner voice matters deeply. Without it, we become our own harshest critics, and it's hard to grow when you're constantly tearing yourself down. It's also important to recognize that growth looks different for everyone. For one person, growth might mean overcoming fear and speaking up. For another, it could mean learning to be still, to listen, or to forgive. There is no universal timeline or roadmap. The point is not to compare your path to someone else's, but to keep moving on your own, to honor your pace, your lessons, your transformation. When we let go of perfection, we make room for authenticity. We stop trying to impress and we start trying to express. We become more honest, more open, and more real. And that kind of honesty, both with ourselves and with others, fosters deep connection. People can relate to imperfection. They can't always relate to a polished image. The more real we are, the more others feel safe to be real too. That shared humanity is where true relationships grow. The most beautiful part of releasing perfection is that it allows us to enjoy the journey. Life isn't a performance, it's a process. And the goal is not to become a perfect version of yourself, but a fuller version, wiser, kinder, more resilient. Each mistake is a teacher. Each challenge is a mirror. Each season of life, whether bright or dark, offers something valuable if we're willing to receive it. So the next time you feel like you're falling short or not getting it right, pause and remember, this moment is not the end, it might be the beginning. Growth doesn't happen when we get everything right. It happens when we're brave enough to get it wrong and keep going. You don't need to be perfect to make progress. You just need to be present, persistent, and patient with yourself. In truth, perfection was never the goal, wholeness was. And wholeness doesn't mean spotless or flawless, it means being fully alive, aware, and awake to the lessons life is offering. Growth begins the moment you stop trying to be perfect and start showing up as you are ready to learn, ready to fall, and ready to rise. Number 3, vulnerability builds deeper connections. It's one of the most misunderstood truths about human relationships, and yet one of the most powerful. In a world that often encourages strength, control, and emotional distance, the idea of opening up, of being real about our fears, failures, and insecurities, can feel risky. We're taught to keep our guard up, to appear unshakable, to present only the parts of ourselves that seem polished and acceptable. But the reality is, real connection doesn't happen when we impress others, it happens when we're honest with them. It happens when we let people see us as we truly are. At its core, vulnerability is about showing up without guarantees. It's saying, this is me, even when you're not sure how you'll be received. It's sharing your story even when parts of it are messy, complicated, or unfinished. It's admitting you're scared, confused, or hurting and trusting that someone will care enough to stay close. While that kind of openness can feel terrifying, it is also the doorway to intimacy, trust, and lasting relationships. Think about your closest relationships, the people you feel safest with. Chances are, those connections didn't grow because of perfection. They deepened because of shared moments of truth. Maybe it was a late-night conversation when you admitted you were struggling. Maybe it was someone who cried in front of you for the first time. Maybe it was a moment when you failed and someone stood by you instead of walking away. These are the spaces where real connection begins, not in the performance of strength, but in the honest display of humanity. There's something incredibly disarming about vulnerability. When someone opens up to us, it reminds us that we're not alone in our doubts and fears. We realize that others, too, have questions they can't answer, wounds they're still healing, dreams they're afraid to chase. That kind of honesty creates a bridge between hearts. It softens our judgment, it deepens our empathy, and it reminds us of our shared need for acceptance. Yet, despite its power, vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness. Many of us grow up believing that to be vulnerable is to lose control, to give others the power to hurt us. And yes, vulnerability does come with risk. Not everyone will respond with kindness. Some people may reject, criticize, or misunderstand us. But the alternative, living behind a mask, never truly being seen, is a far lonelier and more exhausting path. Protecting ourselves from pain can also protect us from love, from belonging, and from the kind of connection that nourishes the soul. True connection cannot exist without truth. If we only share the highlight reel of our lives, we create relationships built on illusion. But when we allow others to see our behind, the scenes, our doubts, our disappointments, our desires, we give them a chance to love us not for what we appear to be, but for who we really are. And that kind of love, the one that sees and accepts us fully, is one of the most healing experiences we can have. There's also a quiet strength in vulnerability. It takes courage to be honest in a world that often rewards image over integrity. It takes inner confidence to say, "I don't have it all together," or "I need help." That kind of truthfulness is not weakness, it's emotional bravery. And when we lead with that kind of honesty, we inspire others to do the same. Vulnerability is contagious. When one person takes the risk to be real, it creates a ripple effect of authenticity. In workplaces, families, friendships, and romantic relationships, vulnerability is the thread that weaves people together. In teams, it creates trust and psychological safety. In families, it breaks the cycle of emotional silence and opens space for healing. In friendships, it creates deeper bonds that go beyond surface-level conversations. And in love, it's what transforms attraction into intimacy, the difference between being seen and being truly known. Vulnerability also teaches us compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. When we embrace our own imperfections, we become more accepting of others. We stop expecting people to be perfect and instead value their honesty. We realize that strength doesn't come from having all the answers, but from being willing to ask the hard questions. We learn that love isn't about fixing each other, but about walking together, flaws and all. Many people think they must earn love by being flawless, but the truth is, real love is not earned through perfection. It is given through presence. When you show up as you are and say, "This is me," and someone responds with, "I see you and I'm here," that is love in its purest form, and it all begins with the courage to be vulnerable. Of course, vulnerability must be met with discernment. It doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone or exposing yourself to those who haven't earned your trust. It means being intentional with your truth, choosing to be real in spaces that are safe, with people who deserve to know the real you. It's not about oversharing. It's about honest sharing from a place of strength, not desperation. As we learn to be more vulnerable, we also learn to create space for others to be vulnerable with us. This means listening without judgment, holding space without rushing to fix, and offering empathy instead of advice. It means learning to sit with discomfort, our own and others, and resisting the urge to escape it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is simply your presence. The beauty of vulnerability is that it brings us back to what really matters: human connection. Not attention, not approval, not perfection, but connection. The kind that says, "I see you, I hear you, I'm with you." In a world that often feels cold, busy, and disconnected, those moments of raw, human honesty are what keep us grounded. So if you want deeper relationships, more meaningful conversations, and a richer emotional life, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Take the risk to share a part of yourself that you usually hide. Say what you really feel. Admit when you're scared, ask for support, offer your truth, not your performance, because on the other side of that risk, more often than not, is someone waiting to say, "Me too." And in that moment, two hearts exposed, two souls unguarded, a deeper connection is formed. One that doesn't need perfection to survive, only honesty, compassion, and the willingness to be seen. Number 4, self-compassion is the gateway to confidence. In a world that constantly tells us to be more, do more, and achieve more, it's easy to believe that confidence comes only from success, beauty, or external approval. We chase achievements, polish our image, and compare ourselves endlessly to others, hoping that one day we'll finally feel enough. But real confidence doesn't come from pretending to be flawless or from reaching some perfect version of ourselves. It comes from learning to be kind to ourselves, especially in our most imperfect, unpolished moments. That kindness, that understanding, that ability to say, "I am still worthy even when I fall," that is self-compassion, and it is the soil in which true confidence grows. Self-compassion means treating yourself the way you would treat a close friend when they're struggling. It means offering support, forgiveness, and patience to yourself when things go wrong. Most of us have no problem being kind to others. We tell our loved ones it's okay to make mistakes, that setbacks are part of life, that they're still valuable even when they're down. But when we turn inward, our tone changes. We criticize, we shame, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to someone we care about. And over time, that inner cruelty chips away at our confidence. Many people think that being hard on themselves will make them stronger or more disciplined. They believe that self-criticism is necessary for growth. But in reality, harsh self-talk doesn't lead to improvement, it leads to fear, burnout, and insecurity. When you're constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, that you're a failure, or that you'll never measure up, how can you possibly believe in yourself? Confidence cannot grow in a mind that's at war with itself. On the other hand, self-compassion creates a safe inner space. It doesn't mean avoiding responsibility or making excuses. It means acknowledging your flaws without defining yourself by them. It means saying, "Yes, I made a mistake, but I'm still learning, and I still have value." It means recognizing that failure is not the opposite of growth, it's a part of it. When you treat yourself with compassion, you give yourself permission to try again. You build resilience, and with each step forward, your confidence deepens. Think of confidence as a flame. Harsh words and shame blow wind on that flame, trying to force it to burn brighter, but often it only flickers or fades. Self-compassion, however, is like a gentle, steady hand shielding the flame from the storm. It nurtures it. It allows it to grow quietly but powerfully from within. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you know you'll stand by your own side no matter what. Self-compassion also helps you silence the voice of comparison. When you're kind to yourself, you stop needing to prove your worth by measuring it against others. You no longer feel threatened by someone else's success because you're secure in your own journey. You begin to understand that confidence isn't about being better than others, it's about being at peace with who you are. It's about knowing your strengths, owning your flaws, and standing tall in your own story. One of the most powerful things about self-compassion is that it gives you the courage to take risks. When failure isn't a personal attack on your worth, you become less afraid to try. You stretch, explore, create, speak up. You understand that even if you stumble, you won't abandon yourself. That inner safety net allows you to step into uncertainty with greater confidence. You're no longer paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, because you know you have the emotional tools to handle whatever happens. Self-compassion also transforms the way you handle criticism. When someone else points out a flaw or offers feedback, your first instinct isn't to crumble or get defensive. Instead, you're able to listen, reflect, and respond with clarity. Why? Because you already know that imperfection doesn't make you unworthy. Your confidence isn't built on the fragile foundation of needing constant praise. It's built on the steady ground of self-respect, and that begins with compassion. In moments of stress or failure, self-compassion becomes especially important. Life will challenge you. You will face disappointment, rejection, and heartbreak. You will have days when everything feels heavy, when your goals seem distant, when your energy is gone. In those moments, self-compassion isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the quiet voice that says, "Rest, don't quit." It's the gentle reminder that pain is part of the process, that you are still growing even when it doesn't feel like it. Confidence that comes from self-compassion is different from the loud, performative kind of confidence that's often celebrated. It's not about walking into a room and demanding attention. It's about walking into your life and owning it, no matter how uncertain the path may be. It's the quiet strength of someone who has fallen many times and still chooses to rise. It's the soft power of someone who knows they are enough, not because of what they've achieved, but because of who they are. Self-compassion also helps you build healthier relationships. When you treat yourself with kindness, you raise your standards for how others treat you. You stop tolerating disrespect because you've learned to respect yourself. At the same time, you become more empathetic and patient with others because you've practiced those qualities within yourself. Confidence rooted in compassion isn't arrogant or superior, it's humble, grounded, and generous. It's also important to understand that self-compassion is a practice. It's not a one-time decision, but a habit you build over time. Some days it will come easily, and other days you'll struggle. But each time you choose understanding over judgment, patience over pressure, and love over fear, you strengthen your sense of self. You become more confident not just in what you can do, but in who you are, flaws, doubts, scars, and all. So if you're struggling to feel confident, start not by trying to be better, but by being gentler. When your inner voice becomes a source of support instead of shame, everything changes. You begin to move through the world with a different energy, not desperate for validation, but quietly assured in your own worth. That's the kind of confidence that doesn't need to shout to be felt. It radiates from the inside out. At the end of the day, confidence isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up fully in your life, knowing that you belong even when things are messy. And that kind of presence, brave, compassionate, and true, begins the moment you decide to stop being your own enemy and start becoming your own ally. That's when real confidence is born. So today, I ask you, instead of chasing an impossible ideal, what if you started honoring who you already are? What if you looked in the mirror and saw not flaws, but features of your unique story? Because the truth is, you were never meant to be perfect. You are meant to be real, to grow, to connect, and to shine exactly as you are. God bless you.